Brazil, if you had to sum it up in one sentence, where is it going from here?
Well, I think it's in the next 6 to 8 months, I think things will get worse, both from an economic perspective and from a political perspective, given the magnitude of this corruption scandal that we're seeing. But in Brazil, when you compare it to other countries in the region, Latin America, there are more stable, there are factors that tend to channel policies towards more moderate grounds. I mean, you don't see the kind of policy radicalisms in Brazil than you see in other countries. So I think while in the near term, I'm very concerned about Brazil, in the longer term, in the next 1 or 2 years, I do think that things will stabilize a bit. And, you know, the country does have some numbers on its favor.
But let's face it, nobody wants to be the cleanest dirty shirt in the drawer, do they? Admittedly, OK, some of the economic policies haven't been quite as wacky as the ones that we've seen in nearby Argentina, but we still have somebody at the helm of government, Dilma Rousseff, whose allies are threatening to impeach her. Do you think that she will end up getting impeached?
No, I think it's unlikely that she'll be impeached, but that doesn't mean I think that she'll survive these headwinds that she's facing. But that doesn't mean that Brazil will go back to the good news, good headlines that we saw recently in Brazil in the last couple of years of country growing a lot. I think that the next 3 years, the remainder of her term, will not be that brilliant when you look from a political and economic perspective. But I do think that there are, Brazil has a huge consumer market. There are strong institutions, which I think sets Brazil apart from other more unstable countries. But will be a very long and painful process over the next 2 to 3 years for sure.
It's had a huge consumer market that has also been racking up an awful lot of debt, sort of credit card debts. Consumer spending has been also funded by that as well. And now the economy is starting to stagnate, prices are rising. The demand for the raw materials that Brazil produces from China isn't forthcoming. So do you think that we're going to end up seeing a lot of pressure on the Brazilian consumer, or are the numbers of middle-class people coming through the system just going to make up the difference?
No, I think that there's going to be a mixed bag in the coming years. I mean, there is a demographic trend in Brazil that has been very favorable of this rise of the middle class, 200 million people, half of which are middle class. Of course, a few years of recession will take a hit. But I think overall, the direction, I think, tends to be still it's an interesting long-term play for a lot of investors in Brazil. But of course, I think that the key thing here is that for government is that political and economic challenges will push improvement of policymaking. I think that's kind of has been the reaction function in Brazil over the last several years and will be again, but it's a very long and it's not a seamless process.
We haven't yet mentioned the Olympic Games. They're coming up round the corner after the massive sort of success of the World Cup football tournament that happened recently. How much of a catalyst do you think the Olympics will be for Brazil to try and kickstart that economy as it's stuttering at the moment?
Well, I think, unfortunately, I don't think it's a solution, because if it were, I mean, you can hold Olympic Games and World Cups in the developing world all over the place, and that would solve the world's problems. It doesn't, right? You see that actually that's, at best, it breaks even. But I do think that what's happening in the Olympics, what happened in the World Cup with the building of these infrastructures, these stadiums, it does highlight broader challenges that a country like Brazil faces, and it needs to prioritize the spending, right? I do think that the problems that Rio is facing now with pollution and security and violence, I think that they highlight it's not only a matter of fixing for the World Cup or for the Olympics, it's a matter of fixing for the Brazilian people. And I think that that's the challenge that will remain beyond the Games next year.